just for everyone's reminder, the Broward Equity Co-Lab is grounded in making sure that we take our insights around what kids need to be successful and feed that with emerging technologies with a particular focus initially around our deployments for algebra and the ability to take algebraic thinking and turn it into mathematical fluency for knowledge economy in the 21st century. That algebra fluency really is the gateway to civic participation in so many ways forward. There's a lot of simultaneous work going on. It kind of comes together in these conversations, but in the end, kids need to own their own learning. And that connects with our belief that a comprehensive learner record that sits in a digital wallet is able to help both the institutions of education help kids, but also help kids own their own learning by the time they graduate from us. We're going to dive some more into the questions around CLR and digital wallet today, thanks to Greg's preparation. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, sir.
Is there anyone else who's new to this call who would like to introduce themselves? Or anyone who'd like to reintroduce themselves? Okay.
Hi, Joel Rose from New Classrooms.
Oh, terrific, Joel.
Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Good.
Excellent. And I may scramble the order a little bit. I don't know, Dan, is Marie, have you talked to her recently? Are we expecting her to?
She and I had a brief conversation at 11 today. We haven't had a chance to debrief on the MOA, but it certainly on my first read looks good. If there's time, we can certainly share that with everyone, but just in brief, part of what the Broward Equity Co-Lab does is reach out beyond just the issues around Broward County public schools, and our partnership with higher ed is really important. Florida International University has been well represented on these calls, and partnering with Broward College, we're trying to get a joint commitment for our institutions that are Broward County specific to commit to both CLR and related technologies, but in particular, the application of blockchain and some other pieces to make sure that we go from K-12 to K-14, K-16 and beyond, bringing in the private sector as well. So we're trying to get a memorandum of understanding formalized by the end of our calendar year to put our joint institutions on the same commitment to deploy this work, not just develop it.
So, and if Marie joins us, then we can, well, put that to the end and we can discuss it more either here or outside of this meeting with her. You know, I just changed the order around a little bit because, you know, I do think maybe it's good actually for us to really start with this whole question around digital wallets and equity. You know, why is this called the Equity Co-Lab? Is this just another technology that, you know, as Bob Moses said, can be used to exacerbate the social divide? What makes us think that this will actually equalize things? Do we think it will? You know, and I want to kind of really open it up to people right away to kind of with thoughts about that. We can come back to it also a little bit more of like, well, what is this digital wall, right? That's actually one of the main things we're going to be talking about. So maybe it's best actually to have conversation C first and then come back to this. So maybe let's just call that a preview. We're going to come back to that topic, right? So once we get some more clarity about the digital wallet, how it works, what it would look like, then let's think about really, and what are the implications for equity?
Just to flag that, or a preparatory thought for the question around equity, it does seem that with a lot of new technologies, if we don't build equity into the implementation of the technology early on, then it will go the other way. You know, it's like whether these are inherently promote justice and equity, is maybe another question.
And I'll just add to that for people's, look, my position is that technologies are inherently neutral. It's how they get deployed and used, right? So the concept of credit as a technology could have produced more equitable access to resources for people to do things. But the way credit was rolled out had a differential impact to exacerbate distributions of opportunity. I fear that so much of the emerging technologies, and look, we're where issues around electricity were 100 years ago. We can either turn it into a public utility for good, or we can allow it to be privatized and serve those who happen to have it. I don't want to be blind to the changes that are going on in learning technologies across the world, to be quite honest, because now we're to the point where the way people learn and the credentials that they carry, it's a globalized exchange. We can either exacerbate it or we can make it better. And I'm trying to be on the latter side of this. It's hard to explain new technologies to people until they see the impact, but by the time they see the impact, it's often too late to ensure that equity is built in from the beginning. So.
Hi, Greg and Dan and everybody. This is Ben Moynihan, and I'm with the Algebra Project. I won't try to speak for Bob Moses. I've learned a few things over the years. But Greg, since you did refer to Bob's comments, I will at least try to give you my interpretation of them. Just so that when we come back to the topic for the discussion, people kind of have a context for what to listen out for, perhaps, with those ideas in mind. So one is that the kind of current individual student transcript model that we have as a country does not promote per se the common good. And it doesn't also evaluate the structures that those students exist in, their classrooms, their schools, their school districts, and so forth. So I think one point that Bob made was that new systems should look at not only what an individual student carries in their digital wallet, and then depending on their family connections, they're able to leverage them in different ways, but also what measures could help to understand and promote, interactions within the classroom, successful classrooms at the school level, district level, and so forth. And there's others on the line who can speak much more precisely and eloquently to this issue. The other is a point that Joni Wynn from FIU made about including, in Bob's words, the idea in the Mississippi voting rights movement was that the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee wasn't itself going to try to be the vanguard of the movement, if you think of that movement as an equity movement. But they created a space in which sharecroppers, day laborers, domestic workers could emerge as leaders and influence policy at a national level. So similarly, in the conversations with the Broward Equity Co-Lab that Dan and everybody put on the table is how can the students and teachers who are living with this issue of math literacy, which the Algebra Project is and others are centrally interested in, but more broadly speaking, quality education, quality public school education, how can the students and teachers' voices be in the mix on the ground floor to influence how this technology is organized in a way that will be equitable, in their eyes too. not just us thinking about what will be equitable for them. And I don't know, there might be other points that folks would make, but those two, I think, give you an inclination of part of where I think Bob was coming from. I'd invite any of my colleagues, Dan or anyone else, to further elaborate.
Greg, also in the chat, Maria Lovett, +1, Joni's comment. Maria, do you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, I'm sort of, I guess, also repeating now what Ben just said, is that I thought that we had discussed this a while ago about having students and teachers at this table, in this conversation early on. And if you recall, Giovanni Williams presented with the group back in August. And in a side conversation, he asked me, whatever happened with that? So I just think that, it's not too late, but we need to be intentional. We keep saying we're gonna do this. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of echoing what Ben and Joni shared.
I'd like to, be in action about that and, and address that, right? So how do we make sure that, I guess I was a little hesitant on doing too much more outreach because I felt like this whole meeting structure, we had a bunch of Mondays that got disrupted because of weather and because of other things. And I was just concerned that we weren't really in a rhythm yet, right? And that we were, but I think we're now stabilized on that front. Hopefully there's no more hurricanes and things that are gonna disrupt this. And I do think that we need to commit to that. I think that the conversation we're having today, what is the digital wallet? How does it look? How would you use it? Is a conversation that should be driven by teachers and kids.
Right. So. Yeah, I mean, and I think that, just if I'm understanding kind of Ben's point, it's that this is what we do, though. We kind of decide we've created the rhythm and then we invite the key folks in, whereas we really need them to help us actually figure out what that rhythm is. So if we go too far, then it's going to feel like, and we grapple with this with Flame. I mean, I'm holding myself accountable too. Like, when I create meetings, are students and teachers present? So it's not easy, but I do think, it's a really important philosophical and pedagogical decision, that we can't let the rhythm go too far before we, bring in the bass drum.
I mean, one thing I would just add on this is here in my community where I live, Somerville, Massachusetts, I do a bunch of community stuff here. And, and we are beginning to organize with kids using Discord and Twitch, right? So we're really trying to get in media that is youth oriented and give them voice. And really, so I don't know that a Zoom meeting, like this is the right forum to bring kids into, so I'm going to be exploring that more. And I don't know if there's a specific, if we just invite 3 kids to come next, is that really what we want to do? Is that going to be a good use of their time? Is that really going to be, I don't know. I don't know if people have.
No, that's a good point, Greg. I think this has been, again, it would require some thoughtful planning around how to facilitate a meeting that really is a meeting that includes those people and isn't just adding them to a meeting that's not oriented to include them per se. So, and then the interaction of students and teachers together rather than in isolation is a consideration to try to aspire to as well. But it would require, not just adding them as participants to an agenda that's already been set, but really thinking about, as Bob says in organizing, the organizers know where they need to go. They're on a bus, they're moving really fast, and actually what their job is to slow down so people can get on. So anyway, to be continued.
Guy, did you want to?
Yeah, just I had a question for Maria and Joni maybe. I know that they have their meetings for Flame, and I believe teachers and students are invited there. maybe we should bring this up to that meeting and maybe bring some student representatives from that flame meeting to this meeting to then talk about their feelings and wants behind the CLR or this kind of wallet that we're talking about. Maria,
That's a
any-
great idea, Guy. I really do. And let me say that to Greg and all of you that, I mean, the technology that y'all have developed is dazzling, and it could be, as Dan suggests, used for so much common good. But I have to echo what Ben and Maria have suggested. I remember reading a poster when Lisa Delpit and I went to New Orleans after Katrina to help work with schools, et cetera, there. And there was this huge poster that said, nothing about us without us is for us. And so, as Maria and Ben suggested, we're kind of doing that with, very unconsciously, but I think it is, Maria suggests, intentionally and consciously, we have to have those folks at our table because it is about them and supposedly for them, but without them, it's not.
And I'm not sure if Discord or Twitch is the best way to get out to them. I think a meeting like this, Greg, is the best way to communicate with them. It puts them on the same level as us. And so we're talking to them like they're our equals and then, a flat playing field basically. So I've been in many meetings with student representatives and Zoom calls or Teams calls, and they hold themselves very well and are very respectable and very articulate. So I think bringing them to a meeting like this, but front loading them with what the meeting's about and having some talking points given to them or thought about before they get here, like Ben was saying, a really well thought out agenda would be the best format for that, for sure.
And who among the
Where's Jon
students?
with this? Is this something that Maisha and Young People Project, actually she reached out just before this meeting and I was going to connect with her? Or who, and is it Joni with Flame? How can we be in action on this who's willing to work with me to do this?
Well, I know Maria and I are because we speak for each other. We're willing to help, and I think Maisha and Cliff for sure would be willing to help. And we do have Broward teachers and students who are very active in Flame and have no shyness about speaking their truth and giving their ideas that often Anne-Marie has said have been very helpful to her. So yeah, I'll be willing, and I'm sure Maria will too.
Yeah.
And is Maisha or Cliff, are they on this call? I didn't see them.
I don't see them. Joni and Maria, could you just briefly explain what FLAME is if everyone doesn't already know that acronym?
Sure. So FLAME really is, it's the local alliance of, it's the Florida Local Alliance for Math, Literacy, and Equity. And it was named FLAME by Alex. Gosh, I've forgotten Alex's last name. Dan, what's her, or Guy, what's Alex's last name? She's now assistant principal.
It was
Yes,
Ben, and then
yes.
it went to Wood, and
Yeah,
now
and
it's
she-
Reese.
Yeah,
So-
there we go. I couldn't remember her new married name.
Yeah.
But anyway, so she came up with that name, but it actually started back in 2004 when the Center for Urban Education and Innovation at FIU brought Bob Moses and then the Algebra Project and the Young People's Project to South Florida to work with our FIU's partners, district partners. And it was really the first university affiliated school-based reform in the nation. So, and it just kept building and building. And finally, we were, because FIU was a partner of Broward County, they asked us to come see Dan, and it just took off once we saw Dan and Guy and Alex at that time, because Anne-Marie, yeah. And so they became part of the National Alliance. Then they helped, create a solid Florida local alliance. And so it's driven by the vision of the Algebra Project and the Young People's Project for sure, but also by the vision of Broward County, which has been, Broward County is the only district-wide local alliance in the National Alliance. There are lots of schools working with National Alliance, but there's no whole district that is really, trying to create this kind of what Dan is always talking about, besides physics and math and social justice, is equity. And so he and the superintendent have really given voice to all of that for all of us. So Maria and I are very proud members of the FLAME organization. Now, any questions, Ben? Did I cover everything or not? I'm trying not to talk too much, which, is difficult for me.
That's great. Thanks.
So I will definitely reach out, Joan, and to you and Maria and Maisha and Cliff, and try to put together something to make concrete progress on that. I know that Jon Haber needs to leave in 5 minutes, and I wanted to get a quick update from him on the casework, the algebra genome work, to see whether he has specific requests for additional meetings, or can you just give us an update, Jon, about where that work is and what you need in order to keep it moving?
Sure, yeah. No, first I just wanted to thank everybody. I have met with many of whom are on the call, so I won't be able to call you out by name, but it's been hugely helpful to get a sense of where we are. I don't think it's time to kind of too much show and tell, but what I've been doing is taking those components. If you remember last time we talked, indicated there's 3 areas. There is standards, content, and then what I was calling pedagogy, but it's really a mix of information relevant to something other than content and standards. In some cases, that might be information relevant directly to students. That would be, for instance, ELL and IEP information. In some cases, it would be directly relevant to practice. And so that's where critical thinking and creativity, communication things as they relate specifically to algebra would fit in. So maybe next time we're all together, I could show you progress, but I've basically been creating a series of small case frameworks using the Open Salt tool. I think the progress is, one, in the area of standards, we have determined how to incorporate coherence maps to what we're calling our compendium. That is the thing that links together all the frameworks. So there we know what to do. I think there's some open questions because there's more than one coherence map out there. There's one from Lumos, there's one from Achieve the Core. We'll have to doing further research to figure out which one to use. But once we build that into the compendium and build the compendium into both the old and new Florida standards, then we have our standards present and accounted for. In terms of content, Emery and her team sort of have gotten me information about how your primary content maps to primary curriculum material maps to the existing Florida standards. So again, creating one framework for content. We've got a subset of that content in there, as well as other things like CON or CK12, et cetera. So that's one area. And then the third piece I kind of break into, we've got a framework where we've got ELL and interventions related to IEP 504 and also ELL. That was provided by Fitz, who I think is also on the call. He and I are meeting later this week to explore further how that could be sort of built into systems that are already being used by Broward. I've also got a chance to take your algebra course in Canvas, as well as your course on ELL, also in Canvas, your PD platform. That's been extremely useful. I guess the last frontier is in the area of pedagogy, particularly 4Cs. As you know, if you've been on this call before, I've got a handle on critical thinking, although there are different critical thinking frameworks. One of them is mine, but there's also the 21st Century Skills Framework. ACT has one, and looking into this week into the other 3Cs, creativity, communication, and collaboration. So that's kind of where we are. Probably if there's a little more time for show and tell, I could show you some of these pieces, but fundamentally we're trying to create a small version, a piece of the case framework, because we know we can always expand it by just kind of adding more the rest of the content to it to make sure that gets right. They want to map it to the right thing. You know, if a curriculum is already mapped to the Florida standards, we want to map to that. If something like Khan is mapped to Common Core, we map to that. Where do we map things like critical thinking to this material? Probably through standards, but that's kind of a work in progress. That's kind of where I'm at.
I'm going to first two things quickly before you go. One, Dan and Guy, do those words all harmonize? Anything that rubbed you the wrong way about what you heard? I mean, obviously you need to see it, right, in order to actually have substantive feedback on it. But is there any, if we next week come back and Jon does an actual deeper dive into this, any warning lights?
No warning lights at all, right? So what I'm seeing is we just need to catalyze this work, and I'll be real clear with everyone that the biggest obstacle right now is certainly funding. And so I'm turning my focus to trying to bring some external funding given the incredibly strained district budgets. We've got what it takes to deliver this. There's several intersecting opportunities that, if we don't move quickly, may well pass. So that's just something that we're moving really hard on. This touches not just our work here, which is focused primarily on algebra, but the work around our special education or exceptional education students, depending on where in the country you are, our work around career and technology education. There's just a lot of opportunity here, and this is the year to, we need kids to begin designing and implementing digital wallets that are operational by the end of this school year.
Yep.
And that's our goal. So I know Michael Nettles was going to be reaching out. I saw him on there. I think, Ben, we were settled on December 3rd for trying to get Jonathan to connect with us as a follow-up meeting outside of this meeting to talk about this work and deepening it. As well.
Okay,
That's correct. We are working on a time. Ben Moynihan knows the time actually. What did we say from
12 to 1:30 Eastern on the 3rd.
Yeah.
Because this granularity, this ontology, this genomic project, and I'm purposely using multiple words here because no one metaphor stands ready, is what it is we're going to be able to give kids in the end the technologies to understand what's standing in the way of them doing what it is they want. What are the institutional barriers? What are the opportunities? What is the remediation that they need to bring? And there's so many people here who touch on this, but we need these projects to move forward together. So,
Jon, I think we lost Jon. He said he was going to have to leave, so he'll be back next week, and we can get an update from him, and then obviously a further one after this meeting on the 3rd to bring that in. So if it's okay, I'm going to now segue on to this topic of the digital wallet. Is that okay? Guy, was there something, Guy, I saw your face for a second. Was there something that we missed from you?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Greg.
Okay. So the digital wallet. This document has been presented to the other co-lab that we work on, which is North Dakota's statewide e-transcript project, and was presented last week to an international group at the IEEE ILR meeting. So a lot of this is trying to get an overall framework because, as we often say, a wallet is just a bunch of leather, unless you're filling it with plastic. And this is just plastic unless this is accessing an entire financial system, right? So when we talk about a wallet, it's the tangible thing that's on your phone that we want to be able to, but it's really built off of all of this work that Jon was just talking about, and that we need to do in order to have an actual education ecosystem. So the key actors, and this actually comes from Europe, are the issuer, the holder, and the verifier. And I think you've all seen, we presented these pictures before. So just at the highest level, you've got the issuer who's registering in a trust network, a skill crosswalks, resources, credentials, revocations. There's a set of kind of common services that the issuer, in this case, Broward County Public Schools, could be Boys and Girls Club, could be others. And then they can issue verifiable credentials to the learner and their adult guardian in a digital wallet application, for which there can be presentations to downstream education and employment opportunities. Okay, so this document has a series of concepts that have been defined that are important in order to have some common understanding of, in order to be able to do the subsequent design work. And we have to think about, how to make this as accessible as possible, particularly as we start getting younger people involved. But I think in many ways, actually, these concepts are going to be, in many ways, perhaps even more accessible to so-called digital natives who have spent a lot of their time in the digital world already. But concepts like saying your identity, which is what makes you you, is not the same as your digital identity, which in some cases could even be an alias of some type, or doesn't need to be necessarily tied as a so-called digital twin to you. But in this case, we're mostly talking about actually creating digital identities that are linked to the learner, so that in ways you can't just make up an avatar and say I'm this fantasy creature, although you can in games, but in this you are who you are, right? And there's this idea of identity proofing. Your parent, the parent, went to the registration site, to the registration center, had paperwork, said, this is my kid, I'm the parent, and now they're part of the Broward County Public School system. They're going to get services, right? So we're talking about digital identities that are tied directly to the actual legal identity of human beings. The identifier is just the ID. And there's a lot of ways of thinking about identifiers, decentralized identifiers. I won't go too much into this because this is all sort of background things that make this type of ecosystem possible. So I'll take us right down now to, okay, so how does this wallet work? We're going to start, what's happening is we're beginning to now define, take this problem space, make it into component parts, break the problem setup, and also learn from other groups that are doing similar work. So I'm taking us down into number 5, the wallet, which sort of jumps ahead, but is important for people to really have that tangible understanding. So, so here in 5, we start out by saying, well, what is the digital wallet? And this is what's interesting, is that when you connect with people like MIT, they see the digital wallet as actually a data model. They don't even see it as an application. And so, we need to acknowledge that there are a bunch of people across the globe working on so-called digital wallets that are all data, no end user anything. I think we here are talking about specifically an app, a thing that you can get on either your iOS or your Android OS mobile device. And it uses the security and the recoverability of that device. So in the same way that one good way to think about the way that the wallet should feel, that I think we all are extremely familiar with, is email, right? So you have your email account, and you can get it into your device. You can back it up onto your device. The security of your device lets you get into your email without having to relog into it. And it's going to hold, in this case, trusted verified records. Those are the types of records that we're most interested in. Trusted, verified records. Claims by an issuer that can be verified as unaltered through a digital signature and leverage delegated trust through a trust network. So we're particularly interested, you could hold other things in them, but to get to that point where the human's value is a currency that can be exchanged for opportunity, these things of trust and verification become extremely important. So what type of records? Well, personal records. It's important to note that we're mostly talking about learner records, but this same technology is absolutely being applied to health records and in some places financial records and other things. And we believe that personal record control is very important. I hear very clearly from Dan here, this idea of that the learner and their adult guardian should have control of their records. It is interesting that when we talk with higher ed, they're not always so sure about that. And Michael, we've had some conversations about ETS and the assessment reports. The idea that the learner and their adult guardian has those records immediately and gets to decide what to do with them. For example, in many places, you can't get your transcript unless you pay your student fees. Now you have a FERPA right to have access to view it, but not to get a copy of it. This changes that whole situation where you're accumulating these records as you go along. You don't need to go back to the registration office or to the what do you call it in higher ed, the registrar, in order to get your transcript because you already have it. So we're talking about learner records, and this is all sort of leading up to the design, these key concepts. So identity, demographic, program participation, accommodations, and achievements. Those are the types of learner records. Specifically, we're really focusing more and more on achievement assertions. So sometimes those are traditional letter grades off of course completion, but really the thing that I think we're all most focused on is this particular type of personal learner record, a so-called mastery-based assertion of specific skills/competencies with evidence. This is hopefully, the gold in the wallet. This is the thing that has, when we can say what individual learners have the ability to do. Now, I don't want to go past, I want to return to the questions about individualism that Bob Moses brought up, and I want to understand those better. This is an assumption that we actually do want to know which kids have evidence of mastery of ratios and which kids don't. That to not know that is to obscure the ability to provide support where needed.
Yeah, Greg, it's not an either or, you're entirely correct. But the question is whether it's a both and whether we understand that a student has been in a supportive classroom environment where they might learn ratios, or one that might not even have a certified teacher. I'm not talking about Broward. I'm just talking like this is a system that's going to grow.
Right.
So if we're at the ground floor, how do you design it as a both and, so that there are not only the specific math competencies or other competencies in different domains, but what are the other measures of structures that individual is a part of, and do the measures actually, the structural measures actually promote peer-to-peer support, looking out for each other, looking out for the whole class, looking out for the whole school, looking out for the whole district, or does it promote competition? Anyway, I don't know, Dan, if anyone else might be able to elaborate on that theme.
No, and I think, look, what we're trying to do here is to make sure that competition does not result in loss, right? Because competition in and of itself can be a motivating feature. But what we are worried about is the rank ordering. We're worried about people being weeded out. instead of this being an open-ended growth opportunity, is this a imposition of a hierarchy? The whole point of education is to broaden opportunities. So if we're locking people into a monolithic way of doing stuff, we're doing the wrong thing. And if it's I get an edge over somebody else so that I win and they lose, all we've done is reshuffle the chairs on this Titanic.
So let's get to the actual interface of what it looks like, because I think that that's what makes this more the conversation even more concrete, and we want to get kids involved with that. So this all leads to basically, a question about record volume, right? Which is, my main point here is there's a lot of records. There's not 5 records. There's 5,000 records in the learner wallet, right? So in many ways, a lot of this is really leading to that. Just when we think about a user interface, we need to think about something that would be appropriate to provide a comprehensive learner record, which will have many hundreds, if not thousands, of records in it. So what might it look like? Well, this is what the traditional North Dakota transcript looks like. I don't have a copy right now of the Broward transcript. I think I saw one at one point. I guess we saw the data. There's a data version of it. But you all are familiar through your life with a traditional transcript. The information at the top, and then you've got basically course by time information. This is a picture of what the National Student Clearinghouse is starting to envision as a passport. I actually don't really understand what all the different colors and things mean, so I would need to get more of an explanation of that. Here's what so-called badger pathways looks like, which is interesting to think when we think about, okay, the learner and they've got these skills and they're trying to get these skills, and what is their pathway?
Can everyone see the detail here, folks?
It's probably
head's being shaken. No, maybe we could zoom in on that, Greg, so that people can see what you're pointing to.
Thank you, Rob, for helping me with that.
Sure.
Let me go back up to just people. Oops. And you can go into, I put the link in the chat.
Right. Maybe we all ought to do that. You see the in the chat, there's a Google Doc there that Greg posted at 2:13. To see what he's showing here, it might be best if you pull it up on your screen.
And I'm not really looking to get kind of the details, but more just kind of, before we can even get into the details of this, what even makes sense? Here's these pathways, and here's a second version of pathways. And now here's an interesting one. So this is a pathway sort of wrapped around in a circle. And so, this individual, the inner circle is their enrollment. So the person was enrolled in K-12 on the right side for a number of years. And this was their preschool, and then elementary school, and then middle school, and then high school. And here's the different courses that they took. And then as you go out, you then get to their to the units within the courses, and then you can drill in more and more towards the actual specific skills. So this is a way of kind of visualizing entire learner kind of timeline wrapped around them with an implied taxonomy. Our friends in Learning Economy Foundation are creating a user interface, a digital wallet for Lego skills. So we're getting some interesting things. I'm just showing these just to kind of get people just to kind of have some pictures in mind. None of these are right. And, I think that the real opportunity here is to work very much with young people and educators to design this. What would make sense? How would you want to see, if you were to pick up a phone and be like, here's me, this is my learning records. How would I want to look at it? How would I want to share it with you? Should we have relationship mapping? Is it just about, and this I think gets to what Bob Moses was saying, do we recognize that the youth doesn't exist in a vacuum, that they have a set of relationships, and that we need to appreciate increasingly that who you know may be just as important as what you know? And can the wallet provide a way of exposing kids who are falling through the cracks, kids who don't have the support to post-secondary transition success, kids who don't have support and motivation. You know, when you ask kids who in the school, what adults in the school do you trust? If they say no one, then, you know, what do we do about that? And then finally, what are you going to use this wallet for? Well, you're going to have your transcripts in it. You're going to hopefully engage everyone in dual enrollment. You're going to submit for future admissions consideration and financial aid. Marie DeSantis, you know, specifically talked about solving this one problem, which is that kids graduate from Broward County Public Schools June 6th. She doesn't get access to their graduation records until June 22nd. Many of those kids are trying to enroll in 4-credit work at Broward College June 24th. She doesn't have enough time from the 22nd to the 24th to get their federal financial aid processed. So that's like a specific problem that she wants this to work on helping. Course credit transfer. So these are just some ideas of ways that the digital wallet could be used. So let me open it up now and look at feedback. People can go in and write edits they want. They can speak about it and also speak specifically about this question about equity. You know, is this something that we can use to bring a truly renewed sense of equity to public education?
Hey, Greg.
Yeah.
This is Alex. Do you mind if I just offer a quick comment?
Please, please.
Awesome. It's really great to be able to see you step through everything from the data model layer up through the end user interface piece. And I just wanted to share a quick thought connecting back to the question about the youth voice and ultimately what is the digital wallet going to look like. And just based on my experience in the technology industry and interfacing with kids and demonstrating technologies to them, engaging with teachers and advisors as well, I think that probably the place where they're going to have the most input to offer would be at that end user interface, the app that they would see when they go to their phone. They may not be as inclined to engage meaningfully at the underlying layers that would be data model or solution architecture, the mapping, et cetera. And so if you can design it, if we can design it in a way where it's modular and the feedback provided by the students at the end user interface level can flow back to incorporate into the data model and have that change go on dynamically, I think that could be pretty powerful. But giving them something to react to, even if it's just a JPEG at that end user interface, picture this as an application on your phone, that could be a really powerful way to get their voice heard in a way where they would actually want to offer it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alex. Are there others who would like to speak to this? Any folks from Territorium? You guys have had a little bit of time to think about it, Guillermo, and is there anything you guys want to share? Any initial impressions?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. Hi.
Hello, Greg. So, yeah, we have several talks around this. So it's very good to see, as you said, like going from the data model until how it will look for the end user. So we have like an initial interface for this already implemented in some schools or in universities. However, as you say, Greg, we should look at, here is a lot of points of data and how this should be looking. It's very important to analyze the best way to create an interface and involve like teachers and involve students to see what will be the best interface for them. So yeah, I think there's work to do with students and teachers to create the best interface possible. So yeah, that will be my first impressions.
Awesome. Travis, did you want to add something too?
I didn't. No, this has all been really interesting to watch. I mean, I think I just reflect a little bit of my time previous to New Classrooms with doing some work in Philadelphia. And I think the importance of this student voice piece that I sort of keep hearing as a recurring theme is an interesting and important one. And you know, I think the intentionality around that is going to be really, really critical to people, to students and teachers, particularly thinking that they really have ownership in all this.
Greg, this is Kathy Brooks. I have a quick question.
Hey, Kathy.
Will our digital wallet, as we're going through this and design and making sure we have the design down, of course, with student involvement, is it also going to take into effect, for instance, if a student wants to major in engineering and architect, something like that, that they have all the math background, is it going to actually allow them to see that they're on track for that? I don't see this in what we've talked about recently. I know we did real early on, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, these pathway interfaces are the types of things that would certainly show, you know, something about kind of that GPS for learning of like, how do I get from where I am to where I want to get to? So that's part of those metaphors. But yeah, I think that's great to bring that in. I think that's exactly what we want is, hey, you want to be a nurse? Well, here's the courses you would need to take. Here's the credentials you would need. Here's the tests you would need to take, right? Here's what that pathway looks like for you.
And I think that's great because they could be somebody who absolutely stinks in math, but they might excel elsewhere, to try with counseling to get them into the right niche.
Ben and Daryl, did you guys want to? So, and sorry, and please help me if there's other one.
I'm looking at, this is Daryl. I'm looking at my wallet now, and you know, I'm a marketing guy, so I'm used to building things for consumers and starting with their benefits and what they need. So that's just where you start new product development. But I'm looking at my wallet, and it's got places for credit cards. It's got a place where I hide my AAA card. It's got a couple of places for cash, coupon, something else. And I say that to say, I don't think the wallet is going to be one size fits all. I think the wallet is going to have, since it's got so many users, students, administrators, teachers, technology folks, I think the wallet is going to have different views for different people. So those different views can be called compartments, but I think no one person is going to view any one, like even if these were the 4 different components of the wallet, they mean something to some people and don't mean anything to other stakeholders. Some people want the journey, some don't. Some want a very quick, tell me real fast where I am, where I'm going, how I'm going to get there. So my point is, I think the wallet is going to have different dimensions of views.
Yes.
That are going to be important to different stakeholders. That's what I think.
Totally. Awesome. Awesome.
Greg? Yeah, this is Bill Crombie from the Algebra Project. And I guess I'm wondering about something. Now, it may be that this is beyond the digital wallet in some sense, but it is an equity question. And that is, I guess right now, the way I'm thinking about it is in terms of exchange rates. You know, I haven't looked, but my sense is that probably, you know, if you're converting dollars to euros, the exchange rate is pretty even. If you're looking at rupees, right, then it's going another way. And I could, well, presently, right, even without the wallet, there are some groups and some children who are operating off of a high accumulation of cultural or educational capital. And so there are clearly inequities and advantages there because they're making their exchanges are being made with euros rather than rupees, right? And, you know, forgive me, India, for using you as an example. But I'm wondering how the digital wallet, with respect to equity, does not simply transport inequalities around education that we find, you know, generally in the society into this digital space. And I'm thinking about that in terms of exchange rates, right? That people have a lot of capital in their wallet, but how that capital is converted into opportunity may be differential unless people have thought about that equity issue. And so I don't know, am I being clear on my confusion here, or the thing I'm concerned about?
It is, I think it's the root question, right? And it's what we kind of started out with is, and I don't know that we need to answer it right now, but I think that these are the questions. I think that you're right on the right questions, Bill.
Bill, this is Daryl. I think your question is right on, because what you're asking is, are we digitizing or digital walleting the current inequities? Where are we getting the equity and not just digitizing the current world? I understand your question. I absolutely understand. I don't know.
And you express it much better than I did. Thank you.
I understand your question. I don't know the solution, the answers, but I think the question.
Right. This is Ben, and I know we got to wrap up, Greg and everybody, but taking Kathy's example, does a student from one district that really has a robust pathway that's supportive of not only individuals, but peers to get into a nursing program, are they up against, is another student from another district where they haven't had the same level of opportunity, but then their digital wallets, you know, they're being compared ostensibly in a virtual meritocracy, but in reality, we know that the playing fields are different. So how do the structures fit into that discussion in, you know, to be continued, like you said, Greg?
Okay, well, this has been a good discussion. I want to thank you all for participating. I think, you know, hopefully we can start bringing back sketches of different things. You know, anyone who has anything, feel free to share with me. I will certainly be reaching out to get more youth voices and educator voices. And next week, we'll also get a little bit deeper dive from Jon into the work that he's doing. Joel, is there something you wanted to say, Joel, before we ended there?
The only thing I was going to say is, when you think about the equity piece, one thing I don't want to lose sight of is how fundamentally inequitable the current system is. What is happening across the country, I know in Broward, is when kids are falling behind, there are not very many pathways for them to catch back up, because we have this course-based system. And so you have a kid who's in 8th grade who has gaps back from 5th grade and is being taught 8th grade, and in many cases falling further behind. So what a digital wallet can do is actually help to correct for the inequities in the current system. As much, while it certainly can be misused, we've got to guard against that. We've got to also understand what the current situation truly is.
So Greg, this is Michael. I just wanted to suggest that these issues that are coming up, and I think you've suggested one of the ways that they need to be confronted. But I think you probably may find that there might be need for whole sessions or forums where these issues can be addressed. And it may be outside of the frame of this hour, but on Mondays at 2 o'clock, but it might be that you devote some concentrated time to exhausting these issues of equity. I want to put one other on the table, and that is, presently when a student gets a transcript from Broward County Schools, the school does some kind of notary, or they stamp it with the seal, and that's what gives the college or university confidence that it is legitimate transport, that it is a legitimate transcript. So the issue of trust on this, on the digital wallet and fraud, those issues have to be confronted too. And I think if Dan's timeline for getting a prototype digital wallet in place by the end of the school year, that we should probably devote some time to scheduling a process to get there, because all of these issues have to be exhausted. And and people who are on the call are going to want to have some buy-in, so that when we get to May or June, we have something that everybody can be, even if it's not a unanimous decision, can have some consensus about. And Daryl's point is a great one, which when he was talking about the variety of wallets, I was thinking about people who like trifolds versus billfolds, or something like the variety of digital wallets that we might produce could come in part from the students, but it could also come from the end users.
Awesome. Okay, well, we're a little over time here. I want to get people off, and so hopefully you'll come back again next week and help us to design this together. This will be a collaborative process, and I really appreciate everyone's openness and participation. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.